Name is Paul Cartwright. I'm the program manager for new building efficiency at C40 Cities, and I'm based in and calling in from London today. Thank you for taking the time to join today's webinar, and we hope it provides some useful insights that can support the work you're doing with your respective organizations and cities. Before we get started, please note that you will have access to the Q&A chat box that should appear at the bottom of your screen. So please use this to raise any questions you might have as we go through the presentation and panel discussion. We may be limited for Q&A time at the end, but if there are questions that come up, we hope to be able to respond offline as needed. Today's webinar will share insights from Quezon City, NEO, and the Philippine Green Building Council on the building decarbonisation journey in Metro Manila. As you will see, there are a number of ambitious policies and projects taking place in the city that will be the subject of the webinar and discussions today. The webinar will start with a presentation by Quezon City and NEO. The webinar will start with a presentation by Quezon City and NEO. Quezon City, Metro Manila's largest municipality, will share the city's recent work on updating the Green Building Code and one of the city's priority actions set out in the city's climate action plan, supporting the transition to net zero carbon buildings. This will be followed by NEO, a Manila-based real estate owner and developer and pioneer in low and net zero carbon development in the Philippines. It will share insights on the work in the private sector supporting the net zero transition. Following the webinar, we'll have a panel discussion involving two organizations who will also be joined by the Philippine Green Building Council. To provide some context, we'll start by sharing some information on the global leadership on building decarbonisation the cities and private sector organizations are taking to accelerate the transition to net zero carbon buildings, and also provide a knowledge base to share with other cities and organizations. I'll hand over to Matt now from the World Green Building Council, and I'll come back in before we start the first presentation. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. And as Paul said, welcome everyone to the webinar today. I'm just going to give a brief overview of the net zero carbon buildings commitment, of which NEO is a signatory, and Quezon, and explain to you why these initiatives are important in driving action. So the Net Zero Carbon Buildings Commitment by World GBC is an industry-leading climate initiative driving accelerated action to decarbonize our built environment. The aim of this voluntary climate initiative is to recognize and promote advanced climate leadership action from businesses, organizations, cities, and subnational governments in decarbonizing the built environment, and to inspire others to take similar action and remove barriers to implementation. And the outcome that we all hope to achieve with our shared goals is accelerated action and to stimulate the solutions necessary to drive market change to achieve our whole life carbon vision, and ultimately to show policymakers that industry is ready for bold action and updated policy and regulations. So if we could go to the next slide, please, Paul. So the commitment has around 170 signatories, 136 of which are private sector businesses, 6 states and regions, and 27 cities. We have been going now since 2018, with signatories joining us year on year. And what you can see on screen now is a summary of the impact that our signatories cover. So in 2022, we did our first round of emissions data analysis, and we understood from our commitment signatories, and this is particular to the business signatories, that they had achieved a 12% reduction in emission intensity in 2022 compared with the previous reporting period. So obviously this is a pretty high level statistic, but really showcasing the action that these leaders are taking, and that these leaders account for around over 400 billion in annual turnover. They have assets in more than 95 countries, over 72 million tons of CO2 emissions, about nearly 100 million square meters of total floor area and over 20,000 assets. So really showcasing the impact that these initiatives can have. And finally, just to note that the Net Zero Carbon Buildings commitment, and indeed those signatories who are participating, is recognized as a demand lever for the Race to Zero 2030 breakthrough goals in the built environment, and is a supporting initiative of the buildings breakthrough. Thanks, Paul. You're on mute, Paul.
When we talk about the cities, when we talk about commitments specifically for cities, we refer to the C40 Net Zero Carbon Buildings Accelerator. The accelerator commitments are focused on action through policy and regulation that cities are taking to drive performance in new and existing buildings, as well as commitments specifically for cities' own buildings, demonstrating the leadership the cities can take. The key milestones that 27 cities have committed to are net zero carbon new buildings by 2030 and net zero carbon for all buildings by 2050. And as part of this commitment, cities are developing their policy roadmaps to inform regulations, but will change, as well as putting in place leadership commitments for their own buildings, for municipal buildings. In addition to this, there are a number of accelerators for the wider built environment that complement this, including the Clean Construction Accelerator, looking at reduction in embodied carbon and other construction design and process improvements to reduce emissions across the whole life cycle of buildings, as well as the renewable energy commitment that looks at improving access to energy in cities and a move to 100% renewable electricity. While this group of organizations and cities is still relatively small, it provides a demonstration of what ambitious action for building decarbonisation looks like, and a benchmark for others to aspire to reach. For example, Quezon City, who we'll hear from shortly, who's moving in the direction of aligning with some of the commitments here. We'll now hear some examples of actions and policy from private sector development to policy development on the transition to net zero carbon buildings. So first we will hear from Quezon City. Engineer Kennedy Diokno from the University of from Quezon City. Kennedy earned his bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the University of Santo Tomas and obtained his Philippine professional license in civil engineering in 1984. He spent 16 years in the construction industry before joining the Quezon City Department of the Building Officials in 2010. He currently serves as the Assistant Official for Administration. Engineer Diokno led the development of the Quezon City Green Building Code of 2025 and is currently heading the formulation of its implementation and rules now. So I'll now hand over to Kennedy, who will talk us through some of these developments around the Green Building Code. Thank you, Kennedy.
Thank you, Paul. So I'm going to discuss the journey of the Quezon City government in crafting its revised Green Building Code of 2025. Next slide, please. Okay, Quezon City Climate Action Initiative Priority Action is Priority Action 1 is policies and actions for energy efficiency, including enhancement of the Green Building Code and incentives for energy efficiency and conservation. And Priority Action 2 is the actions to expand adoption of renewable energy in government-owned commercial, industrial, and residential buildings. This supports Quezon City to reach its climate action target in reduction of 30% by 2030. Next slide, please. Here's some background of Quezon City. This is the overarching mitigation target of the Quezon City government to reduce the greenhouse gas emission by 30% in 2030 compared to the projected business as usual scenario, which is equivalent to 3.6 metric tons of carbon dioxide reduction in 2030, and commit to pursue net zero emissions by 2050. The desired outcome should be to increase the number of buildings and establishments that are green, energy efficient, and resilient, targeting 80 to 100% of our building permits granted are compliant to the updated Green Building Code, and increase adoption of climate-proof, rehabilitated, and improved ecologically efficient technologies. Next slide, please. Equitable approach. The base level requirements of a building depend on its type of use and occupancy and its size. Residential buildings typically have fewer and easier requirements to comply with compared to commercial, institutional, and industrial buildings. Likewise, smaller buildings generally have fewer requirements than larger buildings of the same use or occupancy. Currently, most of the green building codes that are existing are covering 10,000 square meters of floor area of buildings. But in Quezon City, we're covering all buildings, including residential. Next slide, please. These are the green building criteria that we identified: site sustainability, energy efficiency and renewable energy, material sustainability and solid waste management, water and wastewater management, indoor and environmental quality. Next slide, please. Now, here's one of the questions of the developer that being addressed to us. Any building may undergo an independent assessment under an established green building certification process. Any such assessment or process, however, is independent of the assessment or process that is required by the city, but may be used as a reference by the city for the purpose of identifying and evaluating any green building measures being adopted by said building, and may require that particular forms or documentation be submitted to those ends. Next slide, please. Phasing, and this is one of the most important strategy that we identified to attain the zero net zero by 2050. We recognize that the existing buildings has not been addressed in the previous Green Building Code of 2009. So we are now introducing the phasing in. So phase one is today until 2031. Focus on new buildings and allow city-owned buildings to lead by example, including renovations, major renovations. Phase two is 2031 to 2034. I would like you to take note on the years. We aligned our phasing years with the election cycle in Quezon City. Yes, every 3 years, there is an election of chief executives of the city. So phase two currently focuses on non-residential type 1 buildings older than 30 years by 2031, but can be revised by TWG. Specific measures to be adopted by future TWG. Actually, we identified that the priority to phase it are the oldest buildings in Quezon City. And phase three is 2034 to 2037, focuses on non-residential type 1 buildings older than 20 years by 2034, but can be revised by TWG. And specific measures to be adopted by future TWG. We made our code, especially the phasing in, to be flexible, so we won't be tying up the future administration to realistic targets. By the way, the residential type 1, since we included the residentials, we identified that the residential type 1 are the single dwelling units. Next slide, please. Now, the decarbonization of municipal buildings are spearheaded by the Quezon City government in our own municipal-owned building. So we recognize that renewable energy, particularly solar energy, is the best way to offset the greenhouse gas emission of our buildings. So we have already installed solar panels, and we have already ongoing net metering application with the power provider in Quezon City. Here in the Quezon City Hall compound, we already have 4 buildings that have operational solar PV, but the net metering the approval is ongoing. And then ongoing installation for 6 public schools and 1 Quezon City General Hospital, and future deployments for 19 public schools and 100 public schools undergoing feasibility studies. Next slide, please. Solar energy penetration and potential market demand in buildings. To show sincerity and seriousness of these targets of the Quezon City government, with the support of the C40 Cities organization, we were able to commission a consultant to make a study, and this is the output of that study. Quezon City's total estimated 2024 electricity consumption is 5,512.24 gigawatt hour for the year 2024. And Quezon City's current detected solar panel yield based on Google Map satellite identification is 86.29 gigawatt hours, while the Quezon City solar panel yield as percent of consumption is only 1.57%, and the Quezon City solar penetration rate, area panels versus area roof, is 0.66%. Now we have identified the potential that the Quezon City maximum rooftop solar potential yield is 16,098.28 gigawatt hour, almost triple the current energy consumption of the whole city. And the Quezon City current detected yield is only 0.52%. Next slide, please. So that's all my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kennedy. A very useful account of the policy action, which I think includes a mix of mandatory measures with some flexibility, to also include some aspirational and voluntary measures. But also interesting to see the analysis and evidence base looking at the solar generation potential in the city, which is obviously significant, as those recent figures shown. We'll move now. There'll be further discussion on the policy and in the panel discussion later on in the webinar, but we'll now move on straight on to the next presentation. So I'd like to welcome G. Garcia, who's a leader in green building practice and sustainability. As co-managing director and chief sustainability officer at NEO, she brings her expertise in value engineering, due diligence, and regulatory compliance to spearhead innovative projects that drive environmental stewardship. Under her leadership, NEO has achieved significant recognition, including 5-star Bird certifications across its entire portfolio from the Philippine Green Building Council. The company also made history as the first globally to receive the portfolio IFC EDGE Zero Carbon certification, demonstrating its commitment to reducing carbon emissions, and there's a number of other achievements on pushing the boundaries of what is possible for building decarbonisation in the Philippines. Thank you, G. And over to you.
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. I am excited to share our journey toward achieving net zero carbon buildings, a path that challenged and inspired us at NEO. This presentation, I'll walk you through our net zero commitment, the key milestones we've achieved, and some of the best practices that have helped us get there. Next slide, please. Next slide. In 2020, we committed to the World Green Building Council, a net zero carbon building commitment, as well as the ULI Greenprint net zero carbon goal for 2050. This commitment highlights our dedication to reducing the carbon footprint of our properties at every stage, from construction through the day-to-day operation, and even all the way to their eventual deconstruction. Next slide, please. To demonstrate how proactive we are, we renewed our EDGE Zero Carbon certification in 2024. This shows that we're not just meeting the mark, we continuously pushing to do better. We also completed our EDGE retrofit protocol and earned us EDGE Advanced certification. This means we've improved further our buildings' energy performance by using smarter technologies, optimizing water and material use to reducing their overall environmental impact. Next slide, please. Additionally, we've also earned, as mentioned by Paul during the introduction, we've earned the 5-star Verde certification for all our buildings. This highlights our strong commitment to energy efficiency, smart resource management, and sustainable design and policies. We also took part in piloting the Philippine Green Building Health and Well-being and proudly earned a 4-star certification without retrofitting our old building, showing how much we value creating healthier spaces for everyone. Next slide, please. So all these efforts have been recognized globally and locally. Let me share you some of the journeys that we've taken to lead in sustainability, innovation, resilience, and health and well-being. From 2014 to 2022, all of our buildings earned the Verde certification. We also are the first portfolio office building in the Philippines who have used 100% renewable energy. In 2020, we became one of the first to sign the World Green Building Council's net zero carbon commitment, and 6 of our buildings received Energy Efficiency Excellence Awards from the Department of Energy. By 2021, we achieved the net zero carbon across our portfolio, the first in the world to earn the EDGE Zero Carbon certification. We also became the pilot for advancing net zero in the Philippines via Philippine Green Building Council. In 2022, we focused on wellness, and by piloting the Philippine Green Building Health and Well-being Framework and earning 4 stars there, we also became the first Southeast Asia who have achieved the WELL Health and Safety Rating. In 2023, ahead of our commitment, we were the first in the world to complete the A+ ratings under the IFC Building Resilience Index. And in 2024, just last year, we achieved the wide score Platinum and Gold across our entire portfolio and became the largest portfolio in the Philippines to get certified. Next slide, please. Now let's take a deep dive and look at some of the strategies behind these milestones. We focused on passive design solutions, simple smart features that make a big impact. This includes low window-to-wall ratios, double glazed windows throughout power orientation, and glass curtains, sunshades as well to reduce the heat and the glare. We also designed our podium parking areas to take advantage of the natural ventilation and lighting, using louvers to bring in fresh air and daylight. These design choices may seem simple, but they actually are powerful. They boost energy efficiency, reduces our environmental impact, and most importantly, create healthier and more comfortable spaces for our tenants. Next slide, please. In our day-to-day operation, we also put a strong focus on understanding our building's performance. We start by baselining our performance, tracking how each building uses energy, water, and other resources. Then through active policy strategies, next slide please, and smart monitoring, we compare results year over year. This helps us spot what's working, where we're falling short, and where we are at this time to improve our day-to-day operation. It continues cycles of learning, upgrading, and always aiming to make our spaces more efficient, sustainable, and responsive to the needs of our tenants. Next slide, please. Our energy conservation program and sustainable lighting system had made a real difference, not just for the environment, but also for the operations as well. By upgrading to LED lighting, optimizing building automation system, and actively monitoring energy use across our sites, we've seen a 34% reduction in our energy consumption across our portfolio in just 1 year. That's not just a number. It means lower electricity bills, reduces emissions, and more efficient buildings that benefit all the tenant and the planet as well. It's a clear example of how smart design and data-driven operations can go hand in hand to deliver real measurable results. Next slide, please. So to wrap up all this conversation, I'd like to leave you with this thought. Net zero buildings aren't just climate solution. They're strategic assets. They reduce emissions, boost efficiency, and enhance well-being of the people who use them. And in doing so, they create long-term value for investors, tenants, and cities working toward a more sustainable and resilient future. Thank you for your time. I'm looking forward for your questions, insights. We'll share it in the discussion ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, G. That was a great demonstration that there are already examples of high performance buildings being delivered. It gives confidence that the solutions are there and the opportunities to scale these. I think also of particular interest is that the monitoring systems there to measure performance. I think this is particularly interesting for both cities and private sector organizations to inform future policy and projects so that we sort of in this continuous improvement cycle as we move forward in the transition to net zero carbon buildings. So we've heard today a policy example and also some project and practice from a developer and property owner. And I think as we would probably recognize, and certainly as we see in cities around the world, a combination of policies with mandating requirements alongside the private sector moving forward voluntarily, setting out what can be achieved, combined with best practices that the rest of the industry and supply chain can learn from, are critical for this transition to net zero carbon buildings. We're now going to move on to thank you to Kennedy and G, who now join our panel discussion. I'll hand over to Matt now, who will facilitate the next part of the webinar. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, welcome, Kennedy. Welcome, G. And also happy to introduce Christopher de la Cruz. Christopher is the CEO of the Philippine Green Building Council, who's also going to be joining us for the panel discussion. So we've heard some fantastic presentations there from two different types of stakeholders. We have a policymaker in the form of Kennedy, and we have private sector business in the form of G representing NEO. Within this discussion, I want to delve a little bit deeper and understand more of the context, but also, how different stakeholders are collaborating together and how we're going to, take even more action as a sector to decarbonize. So I want to kick off starting with understanding what are some of the challenges facing the Philippines, indeed maybe Manila and even Quezon City, depending on where you want to focus, in achieving your current decarbonization target. So Kennedy, maybe we can start with you. You gave a fantastic example in terms of the building codes, but beyond that, what are some of the other challenges facing Quezon City?
The number one challenge we have is we're looking at the solar or renewable energy as the best mitigation to attain net zero, or to mitigate the greenhouse gas emission of our buildings. Most of our constituents are asking us, what's in it for us, or what does it benefit us, aside from, of course, reduction of our electricity bill and contributing to the climate's wellness. because solar or renewable energy is still costly or expensive for residential. And there is a national program wherein we call it the net metering. But unfortunately, it was 10 years or a decade old, wherein it was the the threshold is 100 kilowatt hour. And when we were asking where that this number came from, nobody can answer that. And I think the biggest challenge for us is we want to incentivize the high impact but high cost measures. Unfortunately, we cannot get the prompt cooperation for our national government to set the policy and so that the electricity provider in our country or in our city can extend that incentives to our constituents. That's the biggest challenge for us.
Excellent. Thanks, Kennedy. So a bit of a disconnect there between action being taken at a local or a city level, a metro level, where actors are often a little bit more dynamic, able to move perhaps quicker than at a national level, and trying to overcome that. I think that's a well-recognized point that many of our attendees and different businesses across the globe would recognize in their own cities or regions. G, maybe over to you, obviously representing a different stakeholder group. What do you think are some of the other challenges facing businesses such as yourself in terms of their decarbonization targets?
Great question, Matt. Like many companies pursuing ambitious decarbonization goal, NEO has encountered some challenges, definitely. But these have been only strengthened our resolve. One key area is navigating an evolving policy landscape. While regulations are already supportive, the pace of the policy change is starting to catch up with the rapid technology and innovation driving this exciting emerging market. So the good news is that the policies are already clearly trending in a positive direction with the growing support for renewable energy and energy efficiency, which is lacking in the past, but right now it's already there. And there are some, considerable policies that are positively providing for this one. This momentum is very encouraging for what's ahead. So while we've experienced a few bumps in the past, the regulatory environment is becoming increasingly enabling. We're optimistic that as a government framework, company, a private sector, and market incentives continue to align more closely with the decarbonization goals of everyone, especially the ones in the private sector, we'll even see more stronger progress, I think, in the near future. So I think we're getting there.
Excellent. And I think that's a fantastic point that you raised there in terms of the alignment with policy, but also it being able to keep up with the rate of innovation and technology. Is there anything between, your competitors and your colleagues in other businesses in the Philippines, that you've been able to achieve so much in the last decade and more as NEO? Is there anything that they would say is stopping them from, having achieved the same amount of action?
I think it's more of like, as I mentioned earlier, it's the scarcity of renewable power because, when you want to be, net zero carbon or so, it has to, it only applies wherein you need to be 100% renewable. We were just lucky during the time, or we were just, ahead when deciding during the EPIRA law that was given by the government that we directly go to 100% for the entire portfolio. And we keep on renewing those 100% renewable.
Sure.
But right, even if you're a developer, you have a very good decarbonization goal, you wanted to go renewable, but there's still a lacking of renewable power on the demand that you need for your development.
Absolutely. Understood. Christopher, over to you. Welcome to the webinar. Brilliant to have you on board. Obviously, Philippine Green Building Council is an industry organization representing many members within the built environment sector within the Philippines. What are some of the challenges that your members have identified in terms of taking decarbonisation action?
Well, it's good. Thanks, Matt, for the question. It's good that I also get to hear the response of Quezon City and NEO. And what comes to mind is the current project that we're having again with the World GBC, which is the NDC project. It gave us the opportunity to have these discussions across the Philippines and learn more about the challenges in addressing the climate crisis. Much of the challenge that we're hearing today is about coordination. There's a lot of asymmetry between national regulations and international standards. There are asymmetry between national regulations and local regulations. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Here in the Philippines, we have a local government code. While local governments are mandated, of course, to follow national regulations, they are actually encouraged to come up with policies that they find appropriate within their own jurisdictions. And this kind of effort sometimes creates a challenge to coming up with a holistic approach or policy that would allow us to coordinate a nationwide effort for addressing climate. And also, we have to recognize physical issues that we have on the ground. The Philippines being archipelagic, you can just imagine we do not have a national grid to speak of. Sources of energy, the greenness of this energy depends on where you are in the Philippines. So achieving climate goals would largely depend on which part of the Philippines you are at. We do not have a nationally recognized carbon factor, no, even after recognizing what our energy mix is on the ground, which leads to a bit of confusion on how carbon is to be transparently calculated, no, when this is emitted. Also, with the capability of various companies here in the Philippines, of course, the approach is triggered by what's available. We have both on-site and off-site renewable energy options. But however, if your company is more inclined to do off-site renewables, it may not be available to you due to supply issues, no, as G have mentioned. For areas wherein this is not available, they may find it financially impossible or quite challenging to invest in such technologies. On-site renewable power through education have led us to a larger part of the population adopting it. However, regulations exist wherein energy companies have a certain level of regulatory capture, if I may use the term. The rules, depending on which part of the Philippines you're in, vary significantly as this is dictated upon by energy providers, which significantly affects uptake of on-site renewables. This uptake of on-site renewables, in the face of this, there's also another layer of challenge, which is even if they're willing to invest, do they have the capability to maintain it on site? You know, designing it is one thing, purchasing it, installing it is another, keeping it, maintaining it, performing well is what we find with our current experience the most challenging. Some are expecting a certain level of performance which depreciates over time due to improper maintenance or lack of training of those maintaining these systems. So these are just some of the strategies. However, we find a light, some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. A lot of times, no, whenever we're talking about climate action, technologies tend that is discussed tends to be very active. That's which leads to the notion that green buildings are expensive. there's always this argument, green buildings require cutting edge technologies. Cutting edge technologies are expensive, therefore green buildings are expensive. However, there are low-cost, appropriate, indigenous, passive technologies that exist in tropical countries like the Philippines. We want to see a way moving forward wherein a lot of this is adopted in order for us to come up with more holistic strategy appropriate to a developing country like uh, the Philippines, Matt.
Sure. Sure. I think that's really interesting, Christopher. All of you there have sort of referenced macro issues, maybe to do with the grid, to do with renewable energy supply. There's obviously a lot that, an industry can do to advocate for that to change. But I think, again, G and Christopher, you both highlighted there that, even if this is a barrier, there's still actions that people can take. Even if you are not able to achieve net zero or net zero carbon, whatever that end goal is, there are still steps that you can take to reduce your energy consumption in the meantime, make your building more energy efficient and still contribute to those shared goals. So I think that's always important to remember. Okay, well, we've kind of touched on it here in terms of these barriers or the challenges that we've identified. But for our second question, I wanted to delve into a little bit more about how policymakers and businesses, the private sector, can collaborate to improve the policy and regulations and accelerated action. So how are we scaling this implementation? Kennedy, you mentioned when we spoke previously about an interesting development where the city itself, Quezon City, is going to adopt targets that go beyond the mandatory level that will be set within the building code, which would be a fantastic example of leadership and showcase to other businesses what's possible. So maybe you could speak a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you, Paul. The strategy in the 2025 Quezon City Green Building Code is for our green building code to be more robust, equitable, inclusive, and practical. Now, we have included now all types of buildings in our green building code. We recognize that the 2009 was ineffective because it was incentive based or elective or optional. But this time we made sure that our building code is mandatory, including the residential single dwelling. And we were surprised. It's timely that our approach is mandatory because even the households, the residents here are receptive to the idea that they should contribute to addressing the climate change. And there is a national green building code here, the PGBC, wherein it's only mandatory for 10,000 and above, but we're now scaling that down to include all types of building, small and even residential, to make sure that we go beyond the targets set by the national government.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kennedy. And I think that's a great example of that collaboration because, by the city taking action on your own municipal buildings, by showing that leadership, you're contributing to that demand signal, within the rest of the sector to showcase and to bring people up. So that's a really great example. Christopher, maybe again, Philippine GBC sitting at the center of this representing a multi-stakeholder group. Have you seen any other examples between your members and other policymakers, whether it's in Manila or beyond in the Philippines, on how they're taking action together?
Yes, Matt, thank you. Just in the past year, we have this advocacy program for sustainable urban development with 3 key cities in the Visayas region of the Philippines. And what we learned is that in developing policy, for local government, it's always crucial for us to come up with a mandatory voluntary policy mix. Because, if you're in a country like the Philippines, it's quite challenging. You raise the standards too high, it will be deemed anti-poor. If you make the standards too low, people would say that the new codes imposed by government is actually a joke. So what is a meaningful way to move forward? And has been a lot of experience moving forward. And usually what is done is we tie mandatory measures, to the local land use plans that is actually promulgated by local government. In any city, there will be the poor sector, the business sector, the middle class sector. And the idea is to come up with appropriate level of stringency on the various sector to make sure that everybody is able to participate, in a way that is not constituting a financial burden on citizens. Now, for example, if you know that you have an industrial district that is actually using a lot of power, you have to find ways on how to regulate that power through your local land use and make it part of your local building codes. For the business sector, you might want to come up with uh, more rigor for energy efficiency for the office business sector, because that is what you find more relevant. Now, for existing communities that's been around for more than 50 years, for them, they may not find it feasible to simply retrofit their homes, especially if the ones living there are retirees. In this sector, you might find that the focus of government there may be in the area of education, focus on operating homes more efficiently than encouraging them or mandating them to retrofit using very expensive technologies, which at their stage in life, they might find it very burdensome. We find that key stakeholder consultation meetings, workshops, more dialogue with city stakeholders, engaging the private sector, the business sector in particular, also the residents, in a city. Meaningful dialogue there would lead to insights that would enable us to come up with better policy, which makes it easier, to implement this moving forward.
Excellent. Thanks, Christopher. I think that's a really good point in terms of, facilitating that conversation between the private sector and policymakers and co-creating, appropriate policy and regulations that are supportive, depending on what stage you're at, what type of stakeholder you are, etc., what asset is under consideration is super important. Okay, G, coming to you again, I wanted to ask slightly more specific from your point of view. We've seen that NEO is an industry leader. You've taken a significant amount of action in this space. So, from your experience and what you've seen elsewhere, what are the sort of market-driven strategies or business-led initiatives that are having the greatest impact in terms of advancing decarbonisation action across the sector in the Philippines?
Thanks, Matt. In the Philippines, I think in the Philippine building and the construction sector, I could say incorporating active design strategies has proven a lot of most effective market-driven approaches to advancing decarbonization, because that's something that you can already pre-plan. If from the get-go you're already, your goal is to decarbonize your property or your building, then it's important that you have to have that passive and active design strategies in place already. In NEO, we have integrating offsite renewable energy, as I've mentioned before, into our operations for over the past 12 years. And this shift from away from coal and coal-based energy sources has led to a substantial reduction in our carbon emission. And that really helped, demonstrating a more tangible impact on our renewable energy adaptation. Perhaps beyond renewable sourcing, we have also implemented comprehensive conservation program and upgraded to energy efficient systems in the property. The lower overall energy consumption and enhanced building performance really help. These business-led initiatives not only cut costs but also significantly reduces on the carbon footprint of our facilities. Furthermore, we also have in our passive design measures, we also improved the building operation, as Chris mentioned before. Sometimes you just have to study, like when we did with our 6 and 7 Neo, our passive design measures there was to improve the building orientation by maximizing the sunlight, the natural ventilation, and then it magnifies our impact on decarbonization as well. By leveraging in this market-driven solutions, companies in the Philippines can definitely and effectively contribute to the national decarbonization agenda, delivering economic environmental benefits.
Wonderful. Thank you, G. And I think there's a really important point that you sort of referenced there in terms of the positive benefits of taking these actions to trying to decarbonize your assets is not only just maybe in terms of an economic return of using less energy, and it's not just about reducing emissions. It can also, when you're implementing these strategies, these design strategies, result in better health and well-being outcomes for your occupants, maybe your clients, whoever it is who's in that building. It can also result in better social equity outcomes in terms of how the building is used and who is able to maybe access the amenities that might be housed there. So when we're talking about this, it's not just about emissions, it's about all of these multiple benefits that can be achieved.
Definitely. And also it helps also your tenant. I mean, in the terms of an asset, portfolio, it helps also in, delivering energy efficiency products to your clients, because it reduces their expenses as well in terms of their operational requirement. So it's like, it's a chain reaction. From the time that you design it, from the time that you construct, operate it, the end users are the ones who's really generating more advantage to this time. And, eventually the stakeholders and the asset owners are also, taking advantage of this one.
Excellent. Thank you, G. Okay, I thought we'd lost Christopher there for a second, but Christopher, do we have you back?
Yes, Matt, but if you had a question the past few minutes, I didn't
No,
hear it. I just left it.
I'm about to ask it now, just to wrap up. So we heard from G there in terms of her and Neo's experience of sort of business-led initiatives. I wonder if you could maybe just give us one example to wrap up from another Philippine GBC member who you think has done has taken significant action in terms of decarbonizing their assets.
Yes, Matt. Thank you for that question. A lot of our members are the prime clients of the Verde rating system. A lot of the leading companies currently now here in the Philippines are report the environmental performance of their buildings. A lot of the assessments that we have conducted were used as basis for the issuance of permits at the local government, where local governments that had mandated green buildings. It eases the way we do business, because when the certificates issued by us are recognized, it provides a streamlined way of demonstrating to government the environmental performance of buildings. We also welcome partnership with local governments, wherein we invite them to our offices, we explain to them our processes so they have better understanding on the level of rigor that we put into our work, which enables them to have a certain level of confidence in the certificates that we issue. This helps both the public and the private sector, and us having a centralized place for training also helps both the government and the private sector. So for example, a lot of the leading, say, companies here in Fort Bonifacio, where we are located, we have a lot of users here in Cebu. We also a lot of users there, and whenever they demonstrate their leadership in climate, they're working also with government. They show the work that they do, and sometimes we also influence government to do the same. In places like Mandaue, before we're telling them we're doing a greener buildings. We hope the city also does it. The city had certified their affordable housing, and it enables us to help reach out to other parts of the country, those partnerships with the leading companies here in the Philippines.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. All right, we're going to wrap it up there and pass it back over to Paul. But thank you to all of the panelists. Great discussion, and hopefully that's been useful for everyone on the call. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you, Paul.
Thank you,
Thank
Paul.
you, Matt.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt, and the panelists. I know we're running just a bit slightly over time, but hopefully it was worth the extra few minutes. We'll wrap up now, but thank you for that great discussion. I think what's clear is there are some challenges, but what is currently being delivered is a strong foundation that can be, with a number of opportunities to exploit to scale action across to continue scaling action across Metro Manila, but hopefully provides inspiration for other cities in the Philippines, the region, and globally as well. So, yeah, we look forward to how the policy develops in Quezon City, and also the projects and initiatives run by NEO and the Philippine Green Building Council. So, firstly, I just want to thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. We hope you gained some useful insights. A special thank you to our panelists, Kennedy Diokno from Quezon City, G. Garcia from NEO, and Christopher de la Cruz from the Philippine Green Building Council. There were a couple of questions in the Q&A. We don't have time to respond now, but we'll try and respond to those offline if we can. World GBC and Seafood hope to do more webinars in future, sharing insights like we've done today, or maybe we'll zoom into another part of the world, and so we can continue this learning across other regions. So yeah, please keep in touch, and we'll hopefully have more to share in future. And yeah, thank you again, and wishing you a good morning, good afternoon, and evening wherever in the world, and thanks again for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.